and welcome. My name is Karen Sandu. I'm from London Partners, and I'm delighted to be hosting this Q&A session with two of our valued commercial partners today, Meridian Solutions and IMA. Thanks very much to our panel partners and all participants for joining. Just a few housekeeping items. Just to let you know that we are recording this session. You do have the functionality at the bottom of the screen to ask a question in Q&A, chat or raise your hand. We want this to be as interactive as possible, so when you ask a question, please only use the Q&A tab. And if you have any technical issues with the session, please also write this in Q&A, and my colleague Lisa will be able to pick this up and answer privately. So just go through the agenda today, because there's a lot to pack in. So we'll have just a welcome from the London Partners team and introductions. And then we'll start off talking about alternative banking solutions with Meridian Solutions, and then speak to Nigel and Frankie from IMA about business development and relocation. And then we will wrap up shortly after that. So I lead the team, or actually I head the team in the financial business service technology space at London Partners. And we help international businesses as they look to set up in London. I'm also joined by my colleague Lisa Stafford, who organises and co-hosts these webinars with me. Lisa, would you like to introduce yourself and just give a brief in your role at LMP?
Hi, just a short introduction from me. I'm providing tech support today. So I'm Inward Investment Manager at London Partners. So I help international businesses who are seeking to set up in London for the first time with the practicalities of setting up, making sure the process is as smooth as possible, and also connecting you with relevant players in the ecosystem.
Great, thank you. So for you, those of you who don't know, London & Partners is the trade, investment and promotional agency for London. So we help to attract international investment into London by helping to attract major events, conventions, businesses, visitors and students. And during these challenging times, we're very much focusing on business resilience and recovery. So our clients and stakeholders and partners are aware of the current business environment and opportunities available, and all the great work that is being done by our businesses and partners to help each other during this crisis. And these sessions happen every 2 weeks and focus on a number of different topics, such as funding, access to support, basically all the things that you need as a business to set up. Very important to us, hence the London & Partners. So we're privileged to have them here today. So let's begin with Meridian Solutions. And Joseph, would you be able to introduce yourself and give a brief on Meridian, please?
Thanks, Karen. And hi, everyone that's listening. I hope you're all well. I'm Joe. I am a director at Meridian Solutions. We're a foreign exchange and treasury specialist. We help international businesses expand into the UK. Mm-hmm. We were founded in 2016 and have built up a large global network of clients and partners. We've also helped a number of London & Partners clients set up over here in London. Our solutions enable businesses to quickly and remotely set up UK-based electronic accounts so they can become operational within a few business days of registering the entity. Our platform is powered by a leading global fintech called eBri Partners. This enables us to offer advanced technology without compromising on a bespoke consultative service. Thanks a lot for having me on today, and I look forward to hearing your questions.
Great, thanks, Joseph. And finally, Nigel and Frankie from IMA, who've been partners with us for, oh, well, you can tell us how long.
Too long, Karen. Too long, isn't it? That's what you're going to say.
No.
Hi, nice to meet you. I'll introduce you to Frankie in a second. I'll just give you a little bit of background. So we've been established since 2003. We've been commercial partners with London & Partners, and before that it was called Think London, so back to 2008. We've got a wide experience because we've been doing this for so long across a number of areas. I've just mentioned a few there: healthcare, technology, and some more traditional sectors. I guess, you know, why are we talking to you on business development? I am one of you. So in addition to running IMA, I'm also a part-time European director for a Canadian VR company, and I've been responsible for their international expansion into, well, the UK and beyond. And I've also been ops director for a US medical device company. So I feel I'm speaking from experience. I've also got experience of launching a fintech, which I'm still doing. I've been doing it for 5 years, but I raised $250,000 of angel funding. Let me pass you over to Frankie.
Hi everybody, I'm Frankie. I run the relocation side of IMA, and we'll be chatting a little bit more about that and around to answer questions afterwards as well when Nigel's through. Nice to meet you.
Great, thanks so much, Nigel and Frankie. And thanks to everyone who has fed in questions prior to this session. I see that the question came up about the recording. So when we follow up, we will send a link of where all the recordings are. You will be able to see this once it's finished. So Joseph, we get a huge amount of queries about setting up your bank account. It's by far one of the most popular questions that we get asked, and is also the biggest challenge. So excited to see how Meridian Solutions can help. So should we kick off? Lisa, do you want to just move the slide on, please? Thank you. So what, I guess one of the biggest questions is, what are the main Treasury challenges businesses face when expanding into the UK? Okay,
so Treasury challenges when expanding to the UK, they're fairly similar to when you expand into other regions on the whole. So, you know, you're having to deal with a new currency. You'll be dealing with the pound over here. And obviously there's the obvious foreign exchange risk that comes along with that. You'll also need to consider where your treasury function will be positioned. Will it be dealt with from the headquarters in the parent company, or will you have a local accounts department, as well as looking at capital, working capital, where the funds are flowing, and managing liquidity for your subsidiary. But as already mentioned, by far and away, the biggest challenge that businesses will face when expanding into UK is opening up a UK corporate bank account. Often this is left until the last minute. So we'd recommend that you start the process as early as possible, and plan around it taking a little bit of time to organise and set up.
Thank you. So you've talked about getting a bank account is quite difficult, and it's definitely our #1 question. So what are the barriers and why is it so difficult?
There's lots of reasons for it being difficult and the different barriers. Each bank will have their own criteria. So you need to kind of take a general view of it, and I'll give you a rough idea on what the main reasons are and the main issues are, but obviously I can't speak for each individual bank or each individual example. It's a question we get asked a lot, and really the main thing boils down to is regulations. The banks over here are very strictly regulated. Over the years things have got stricter and stricter, which means that banks have a lot of compliance risks that they need to manage. Okay, so that means that they will require a lot more due diligence and a lot more compliance work to help onboard clients. Okay, and then with foreign entities setting up in the UK, they actually typically increase the risk profile. They have a higher risk profile because they often have foreign directors and they have foreign owners, both of which will add to the risk of the client. So what you tend to find is that it takes a lot of time, a lot of banks' resources to go back and forth and collect this information that they need. And when you think banks have got quite a lot of layers of process and they're often using legacy systems, this can take a long time. So really it's a risk-rewards scenario. Banks, some of them just don't have as much appetite for this kind of business. If they do, there's probably normally a bit of a queue as well to get you on board. But again, it varies. But the latest barrier, obviously, which is a big hurdle at the moment, is COVID-19. We've seen certain banks totally stop accepting new business applications. So obviously their resources are tied up elsewhere, but that's obviously currently a big issue. And there's obviously a big backlog of accounts that they need to work through. So right. It's only exacerbating the issue.
Right. Okay, and so a lot of our businesses who are online and the ones we work with are international businesses, as you mentioned. How can these businesses, when expanding into London, overcome the banking issue?
Okay, yeah, so good question. It's one we get asked again very frequently whenever anyone comes on to us. Unfortunately, there is no quick fix. It requires a lot of patience and a lot of perseverance and effort. There's no magic bullet. It would be good if there was, but there are a few things that can help. So having a UK resident director, that will certainly help. Not only can they help manage the process, but it will reduce the risk profile on the account, therefore making it slightly easier to open the account and a bit quicker. I would also recommend getting together as many documents as you can up front, so you're ready to provide these as and when required. I think a lot of the delays come when clients are trying to get the information and provide it back to the banks, and then the banks take ages to speak to each other, and then they fire back another question, another request, and that process just makes the whole thing drag out. So upfront supporting docs would be ideal. But finally, I mean, the main, you know, one of the main things that we do is basically offer a different alternative to the traditional banks, which is a quicker solution. So it's worth looking at alternative banking providers. Obviously, I can explain a bit more about what they do and how we can help.
Great. So that comes very nicely onto my next question, and obviously it's in our title of our topic today, but what is alternative banking?
So alternative banking typically refers to electronic money accounts that are used by companies as their business account. So versus using a traditional bank, you can use electronic money accounts, which will mean you are provided with your own bank details in your name. These are typically accessed via a user-friendly online platform, and it allows you to then get paid from your customers, send payments out for local bills and whatever else, manage your account balances and do things that are quite essential, like registering with HMRC, paying your staff, and if you need to, converting currencies. So essentially, they allow you to become operational from a banking payments perspective very quickly. These alternative banks are financial institutions that are regulated by the FCA as electronic money institutes. They're also extremely secure. They ring fence all of the clients' funds, and they're usually held with tier 1 banks. So yeah, so it's a good alternative.
Okay, thank you. So you've touched on some strengths there. Are there any other main strengths of alternative banking?
Yeah, so as I said, we have touched on a few strengths already. I would say most of the strengths, though, lie with the fact that these are fintech companies, so financial technology companies. So they're geared towards offering amazing tech. And with that tech, you get great payment processing technology. Signing up is extremely quick and generally easy. Running the accounts becomes very, very straightforward. They also employ the latest advanced security features, and it's yeah, it just works smoothly. But I think for your audience, the key thing really is that you can also set these accounts up remotely, so you wouldn't actually need to even come to London, which is obviously quite apt with the current pandemic going on. So that can be also a key strength as well. Lower costs as well. So typically, because of the tech involved and the fact that they don't have these expensive overheads that banks have with branches and older systems and the extra compliance costs, they can offer most of their services at much reduced cost. So yeah, I'd say they were the main strengths.
I mean, the amazing strengths, you can do it remotely and it's low cost. So, and are there any weaknesses?
Yes, there are weaknesses. I'd say I'd put the weaknesses as versus the traditional banks really. And I think the biggest thing that's, well, the biggest weakness really is that they're lacking some of the services that traditional banks would offer. So for example, as I already said, there's no branches. So it's purely electronic. There's no cash or checks. So if you deal with those sort of things, then you'd need to stick with a traditional bank. They also don't provide any interest. So if you had savings that you wanted to make interest on, I know there's not much interest out there at the moment anyway, but if you did, that's not something that you'd be able to get with these accounts. Furthermore, there's no lending. So if you were wanting a loan from the bank or some trade finance or overdraft facilities, you would not get these from these providers. I'd say another thing, about them being digital accounts is some providers would, almost be a bit too digital. So you'd go online and you do it all yourself, which is fine, but you would be compromising on a bit of personal service that you'd be losing. So it depends on your view on banks and how much personal service they offer, but it would probably be less with some of these providers. I think the final real weakness that I think is probably most relevant to the people listening today is related to visas. So for anyone that's looking to set up in the UK and send over staff from overseas, you'll require a tier 2 visa. To get a tier 2 visa, you need a letter from the bank, a supporting letter. Okay, now because these providers are not technically banks, they can't write you that letter. So unfortunately, it wouldn't help support your tier 2 visa applications immediately. So again, if that's something you need to start your business right from the start, then unfortunately you're going to have to persevere with the banks, and however long that might take to sort out. Okay.
No, it's good to know. And you have helped a number of our clients actually get an account quite quickly. Yeah. What type of information or documents do you normally need to set up an account?
Okay, so this is kind of similar information to what you would need with a bank. We all have to kind of follow the similar regulations, albeit banks might be a bit more over the top or stringent, shall we say. So obviously you'd need to complete an application form. Usually these are electronic, and provide evidence of a legal existence. So that basically means proof that you've set up the company. It's a limited entity in the UK. We would also need to identify the directors, owners, any important people. So we'd need their proof of IDs and proof of address. We also need to understand the ownership structure and identifying the key owners. Okay, this is essential. So whether that's providing an ownership structure chart or anything along those lines, anything official, then that can help. And then obviously we will need to understand the source of funds and wealth, again, because of money laundering regulations, etc. We need to drill into that. So whether it's just an investment coming in from the parent company or operating revenues, or maybe you're getting a grant from somewhere, we would need to see evidence of that. And then finally, just a bit of evidence of business activity. Obviously, you won't have much of a footprint in the UK when you set up. So we'd often look at the parent company, get a feel for the business activity there, request any invoices, examples of invoices, look at your website, and look at any financials, that kind of thing, just to really kind of understand that the business is an active business. And yeah, those are the main things really. Okay, thank you. And how long does it usually take to open an account? This depends on the complexity of the account really, so it will vary. It will also vary according to which provider you work with. So, if you've got a complex ownership structure with lots of different owners and different layers involved, then that will be, will take longer. But if it's straightforward, just owned by one person, one director, then that's obviously a lot more straightforward normally. But overall, as a general sort of rule, I would say with the traditional banks, again, some might be quicker than others. You'd be looking probably months to get an account open with a traditional bank, particularly with COVID. With the electronic money institutes, you'd be looking at a few days. So a few days upon registration. Some might be able to do it same day if it's a simple account. So the time difference is quite significant. Yeah, no, awesome. So just a quick question. So if you're actually go through yourself and set up a quick account by yourself, can they also concurrently set up a normal bank account with Yeah, exactly. So exactly. So we actually always encourage our clients to continue with their traditional application as well. There are services that they offer that we don't, and that's why I'd always encourage that. Like I said, particularly if you're looking for visas, or at some point you might want finance, that kind of thing. So yes, 100%. We encourage that, and it's not a problem to us basically. Okay. Great. And do you need boots on the ground or UK-based staff to set up an account?
I know you kind of touched on it earlier.
Yeah, exactly. So with our provider and a few of the others, yeah, you will be able to do it without boots on the ground. So again, you can do it fully remotely, but that will be provider specific. So I can't speak for every provider, but I would say it's fairly common that you can do it without any staff over here. So it's great for when you're wanting to maybe to test the water. You want to set up a UK business, but not invest in an office or employing staff over there. So you might start off as a sales office, but running the sales from, I don't know, your parent company, say in the US, then obviously it's very useful for that scenario.
Mm-hmm. And is it essential to have a UK account when setting up in London?
Well, yeah, believe it or not, it's not essential. It's physically and legally possible to run a business in London without a UK account. However, we would obviously advise against that, not only for the obvious accounting and reporting complications it would cause, but also there are some sort of key areas why you need a UK account. I'd say the biggest one is for tax reasons. For HMRC, which is the tax authority over here, if you want to register for VAT, you will need a UK bank account to receive the VAT rebates. So without a UK bank account, you won't be able to receive them. They'll send you a check otherwise, but you won't be able to cash the check again. So that's a reason why it's pretty essential to get some UK account details. Also, customers expect to be dealing with if you're dealing with a UK company, customers expect to be sending payments to a UK company normally. Some large organisations will make, it's actually a requirement of theirs as well. They won't send a payment overseas if it's, not for a UK company, if that makes sense.
Okay, really useful. And if anyone's got any questions, please feel free to put it in the Q&A. Lisa will kind of let me know. So, I mean, ultimately, I guess one of the questions we get asked is now a good time to be investing in London, into London?
I think it's always a good time to be investing in London, of course it is. No, but from our perspective, particularly from the foreign exchange FX side of things, which we're obviously experts on, we think it's an extremely good time to be investing in the UK. The pound is exceptionally weak. I'm sure most of you have seen how weak it is. For various reasons, mainly Brexit, but also just general risk aversion and the market, as it is, stresses the pound. So the pound's very weak, and particularly against the dollar, you're still looking at levels that are towards the lowest it's been since the mid 1980s. Okay, so that's 35-year lows. So over time, currencies normally balance out in the long term. So if you're looking at investing in the UK as a long-term project, then yeah, it's a good time in our opinion.
Okay. And finally, is there a good way of controlling the exchange rates or managing the costs of investing funds into the UK? Yes,
there is. And as just touched on there, the pound is very weak at the moment. So you get a lot for your money over here with the way things are at the moment. So yes, there are ways of doing it. So you can fix the current exchange rates out up to 5 years if necessary.
Wow,
so
okay.
Using a product called forwards. Sometimes people refer to it as hedging, but yes, you can fix the exchange rate up to 5 years in advance, which basically allows you to control your investment and reduce the risk and know what your costs are. If you're having to send over a monthly figure from dollars into pounds, for example, you know how many pounds that's going to get you each month or how many dollars it's going to cost you each month. So it can be a very useful way of controlling your investment.
Okay, that's brilliant. Thank you so much, Joseph, for all of that. I think it's honestly one of our top hot topics even, and just let everyone know that if contact details will be up to contact Joseph directly from Meridian, and they have helped a number of our clients who are in a bit of a bind, so please feel free to contact him directly. And thanks a lot, Joseph.
Thank you. Hope I answered all the questions well enough for you guys.
You did. It was brilliant. Thank you.
Good stuff.
And Nigel and Frankie, we'll come on to you. I guess we'll start with you, Nigel, if that's okay. Just talking about market access, yes.
Yeah, so I mean, I guess what we want to think about is before you come to the UK, just some questions to ask yourself. I mean, we've seen in the past companies have landed here and they've then struggled to understand whether their, product is right or service is right. So before you arrive, here are some questions that you should really have the answers to before you come. So, things which, none of this is rocket science, but, what's your competitive edge? How are your clients going to be buying your service? How are you going to communicate with your clients? And I think you also need to make sure that you have access to the right decision makers in your target clients. So what I would say, and from experience, as Karen pointed out earlier, we've been doing this for probably too long now. If you've got these answers, then it's going to be a lot easier, for you to hit the ground running, when you finally set up in the UK. If you could pass on to the next slide, Lisa. So in terms of one of the ways that we help our clients is that we have a market access project. So basically we get somebody from your target market. So these are people, you might describe them as interim managers or independent consultants, but they are effectively people who you would have targeted. So they understand the market. So when you're actually answering or asking some of the questions which I previously posed, they will have a number of the answers. So they'll be able to tell you in advance a lot of things about your product and service. But then what they do is they will then go out to the marketplace and they will contact effectively former colleagues and peers. So one of the things about the UK is that it's all quite, closely knit. So you find if you're working in a particular environment and you've worked in there for some time, then you'll be able to, contact those people and they will, because you're one of them, they will then start to engage. So we're not trying to sell to these characters. What we're doing is we're asking a question, if this product or service came into the UK market, what's your feedback? And what you find is quite strange. By not actually trying to sell to people, but by actually asking them some questions and can you help? And we're really looking to bring this international client who's been successful in this particular market, by asking them for help, there's this subliminal sale which goes on where they're saying, actually, we're really interested in this. So you find that doors start to open. And what we do is, it's not a question of you kind of passing this on to us or to the interim manager stroke consultant and them asking the questions. We'll get you involved. So you actually start talking to these prospective clients. Don't sell to them, but just talk to them about what you're doing in other markets, where you see things, and you'll get, some great feedback, but you'll also get some good doors opened. And I think the other thing, with this is that you're going to have a report. And in the earlier slide, I kind of talked, I didn't actually mention it at the time, but if you're sending somebody, you've got to really think of a budget of probably somewhere between 150,000 to 250,000 to get, boots on the ground in the first year. So before you start, saying that you're going to be spending this type of money, actually you're far better to understand whether it's a go or a no-go. So we have done a lot of these and they've moved forward, but then we've had some clients who've said, actually, this all looks too, not the right timing for us, or it's different to what we thought, or we need to go back and just adapt things so our solution is correct for the market. So market access, projects, they take between 15 and 20 days in terms of actual days spent, and that's probably over a period of 2 to 3 months. So within 2 to 3 months, you'll know whether you have something which is going to work or not.
Okay.
Click on Lisa. Karen, have you got any questions or?
Well, I know you've talked about market access, and so in what scenario would you have a market access report?
So we see a number of different types of clients. So some clients come to the UK because they've picked up a large international client, and that large international client has said, come to, you must be in Europe, and so they come to the UK. Others, they've got a tech solution and people start buying it over here. But where we mainly see it is where you have a venture capitalist, you're proving success in your own market, and what they're saying is, does this sell in other jurisdictions? And the great thing about the Brits is that we will buy anything from anyone. And it's a great market to test things. So it's good for VC-backed companies. And then if you're working in a smaller country, you might have completely dominated your market. And so the UK is a great springboard into, well, the UK is a great market in its own right, and it is still a great springboard into Europe, and certainly into what was the empire and is now the Commonwealth. So if you don't understand the market, it's normally those two. So it's the VCs and also people who are coming from small markets.
Okay, that's really helpful. Thank you.
Would you go to click to the next one? Right. So how best to open up the market? So I think probably the thing which I've really put across most is that you have got to make sure that you do understand what you're getting into. So, do have the answers to the questions that I previously posed. So that would be my number one. So know what you're getting into. You've got to have boots on the ground. This idea, this notion of flying in, flying out, expecting to build relationships, it just doesn't work. So you have to have a UK employee or a consultant, or if you are sending over your own staff, you can use someone like an interim manager or a consultant, to provide mentorship, to whoever's arrived over here. So, that access to opening the right doors is a really important one. Also, kind of, Joseph, I really enjoyed what you were saying, but you've got to have the right infrastructure. So again, London and Partners, you're talking to two commercial partners, we're hearing from two commercial partners today, but London and Partners has a number of commercial partners who will enable you to set up all of the infrastructure you want, and we all have to go through a vetting process, to prove that we know what we're doing. So that's the normal route. What you can also do is, and something which we'll talk about in a little more time, in a couple of slides, is professional employee outsourcing, and that's a way of hitting the ground quickly. And then clearly, if you're sending an employee or employees to the UK, definitely use a relocation company. I mean, again, I think Joseph kind of touched on it. If you land in the UK, it's going to be different to your home market. So having somebody who's going to be able to advise you, on where to live, help them find homes, and then get those homes up and running and provide advice, that's really important. So they would be the four key things.
Okay, brilliant. And I completely agree. And we'll talk to Frankie about relocation shortly. But yes, it's fundamental to businesses coming to London. So in your opinion, why does the approach of an interim manager or consultant work?
They tend to have, a bit like me, a few grey hairs, and they will understand the industry. And you're setting them a task. And they will be, so if you're setting somebody a task and you're also, you've got questions, so you'll have certain questions, the questions which I posed. So you know what the whole number of questions are, and so they'll be very specific and they'll be very honest with you. Whereas if you ask those questions of an employee, they might tell you what they think you might want to hear. Whereas if you've got somebody who's an expert from the market, they'll tell you very quickly whether it's going to work or not going to work, or what you need to do. So I think that honesty, and I think having a very specific goals are the reasons, and they know that they're in to do a specific job and to then exit. So you can continue to work with them on an advisory basis, and sometimes they do become employees, but advisory certainly.
So you've obviously talked about having an interim manager. You said it can lead to new business. Why is that?
So when we go out to the marketplace, we're not going out and selling. What we're doing is we're actually saying, here is this exciting international business, we want your advice. So as soon as if you start selling to people, they can become quite close. As soon as you start saying, look, we could really benefit with your advice, suddenly any barriers which were there suddenly come down, and they start to be completely engaged. So they go, oh well, no, this is great, and if we could do that. So they're then talking not about you, but they're talking about we. So they become engaged, and it typically, generates new business.
Yeah, and I've seen that in action with you and some of our clients from North America, Nigel. Very much so.
Thank you, Karen. In fact, I didn't work with one of them. So.
And just finally, before we move to the next slide, is there an opportunity to continue working with the interim manager?
Yes. So the interim managers. They've normally had a corporate career, and they do like to do project work, but in many respects, when you're coming to the UK, it's like a project. So getting companies up and running, they like to do that. So there are options to use them on a full-time basis, or you might even have a fixed-term contract. So we also deliver outsourced HR. So you might choose to have them on a fixed-term contract, maybe for a year, or you can use them in an advisory capacity, and they love it. So they are effectively an extension of your business if you want them to be.
Okay, brilliant. Thanks, Nigel. Do you want to move to the next slide?
So
not quite that way.
nearly, Lisa. So professional employee outsourcing. So basically, this is a fast way to start generating new business, but this is with a permanent representative in London. So we've talked about an interim manager stroke consultant doing your market access. So this would happen typically after your market access, or if you're in a situation where you've got an international client, you've got clients who are already over here, and it's a quick way of getting boots on the ground. And basically, it's a one-stop shop. So effectively, IMA, we employ the employee, if that makes sense. So we will do all of the HR, we do all the payroll, all the government forms. You have to have a pension scheme, so they plug into our pension scheme. We manage the expenses. A lot of our clients come from North America, so we're here. We manage the expenses. We've got suppliers, so it could be phones, computers, fuel cards. We give access to those, and we make the acquisitions. And then you have to have employers' liability and public liability insurance, so they're covered by that. This is always an interim gap,
Yeah.
This is something to get you started. So typically it's normally around a year. And picking up what Joseph was saying, that during that year, you would typically kind of morph into the UK registered company, and but by then you'd have all the bank accounts set up. So this is a quick way of getting boots on the ground. So given this whole COVID thing at the moment, if you wanted to, if you saw an opportunity in London, you wanted to have boots on the ground quickly, and you didn't have all the infrastructure in place, this is a great way of doing it.
Yeah.
But it's
So
not
it's
a long-term solution, no.
I was going to say it's not a long-term solution for international clients.
No. And I know in North America in particular, there is a lot of PEO. The only thing which is the same between the professional employee outsourcing that we do and that is done in the US is the name professional employee outsourcing. That they are very different beasts. The reason that we're doing PEO in this country is more around getting set up very quickly, but it's more related to HR type issues because HR is a much bigger issue over here.
Yeah.
In the US, a lot of people use PEO so they get access to benefits, and in particular, the health benefits.
Which we obviously don't have that issue here with the NHS.
Not an issue at all. Not with the NHS. No.
And I am aware. I know that it, in those bigger PEO models, it can become a bit more complicated and costly as the team grows.
Oh no, we don't. We would, as soon as clients start getting up to 5 employees. I mean, typically it's between 1 and 3, but the reality is we then say, yeah, you need to crack on with setting up your own limited company. So it's very much a halfway house. That's how we market it. And what we will do is, say our suppliers, we will always introduce those. We'll introduce our clients to the pension scheme, for example. So we'll try it. It's all about that handover, which is what it's all about.
Yeah. So when they want to terminate the contract and set up their own UK company, how does that work?
So we need 3 months notice. We need 3 months notice anyway. There's this process called TUPE, which stands for Transfer of Undertaking for the Protection of Employees. It's a piece of European legislation. That may well, life may well change, but I imagine something similar will happen. It's a very straightforward process that when somebody transfers over, they have to transfer over on the same terms that we actually have them employed on. So if they're on 3 months notice, then they have to have 3 months notice. If they've got 5% employers pension contribution, then that has to transfer over, and it's a continuation of employment.
Okay. Great, thank you, Nigel, really helpful. And I'm just conscious of time, so we're going to move on to Frankie. If you could shift over.
I'm just going to shift over. Thank you very much. Sliding over, yes.
So I'm really, sorry, Frankie. I was going to say, I'm really delighted that you're on this call because I know it hits the North American market and you have helped so many of our North American clients. So if you just want to go ahead and talk about what you do.
Yes, so thanks, Karen. So Nigel's given the background to our company, and as I say, I handle the relocation side of things. And usually I'm very often the first point of contact for an executive or an executive with his family coming over to London. We've got as a team here, we've got a very good knowledge of London, of all the neighbourhoods, various sort of peculiarities of each neighbourhood and what people are looking for. We've built up very good relationships with estate agents, sort of big high street ones, corporate ones, and then also smaller indigenous local agents that you find sort of in more sort of pockets of London. So that's sort of something that we're very, very familiar with. Listed are probably the most common areas that we look at. Shoreditch certainly being quite a popular one because of obviously its relationship with people in tech companies. So Shoreditch and are very much areas that people want to live in, especially if they work in the tech industry. But they're probably a flavour of what we look for, but it can be anywhere.
Brilliant. So one of the biggest things, obviously, if you don't have a bank account, you can't get a bank account without a UK address, how do you pay deposits? And it's one of the biggest questions. And I think it's the biggest obstacle a lot of our clients don't realise they're going to encounter. So how can you help?
Absolutely. So sort of on this slide, just sort of quickly going down into number 3. When you move into a property, you have to pay a holding deposit, which is a week's rent. And as Joe was saying, sort of on the corporate side about setting up a bank account, You can't, it's very often that our clients will say, well, I don't have a UK bank account in which to pay this deposit. And so therefore just unnecessary time is lost in asking for, the company maybe to transfer funds or from overseas, because good property goes very quickly. So we always pay holding deposits on your behalf. It's a very smooth transaction. It's done instantly. It's just a very sort of simple way of us saying, right, this property is now off the market. It's dealt with because we've paid this holding deposit for you. And then that allows them the referencing and the contracts and everything to be done. There's absolutely no delay. And then you've sort of got a certain amount of time then to pay the rest of the monies. But that holding deposit is what's usually the urgent thing that we pay on your behalf, which I think is quite a USP. I don't think any other companies actually do that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's one of the most painful things that you take away that pain. Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely.
Yeah.
So how do people register for council tax and utilities?
We work with a company. There are quite a few out there, but I've got a very, very good relationship with a company called Please Connect Me, and they handle everything for you. It's a free service to anybody relocating, and they will handle your council tax, which for anybody who doesn't know, council tax is a mandatory tax that everybody has to pay. We have 32 London boroughs, London districts, and they're all autonomous with their council tax. So from the most expensive to the cheapest of London, they will work out what your council tax is, and it's based on the value of what your property is worth. It's nothing to do with the rent you pay. It's what the property actually is worth. So they will sort you out your council tax. They can be paid yearly, it can be paid monthly, it can be paid quarterly. They will also work out the best Wi-Fi package for you. So say the fastest provider in your area, whether or not that has fibre in your building, or as I say, just what the best package will be. They set you up with all your utilities, which will be electricity, gas and water. So they handle everything. They can handle insurance, they handle if you want a cleaner to come in once or twice a week, and it's just one phone call. It's not trying to register with British Gas, trying to register with the electricity company, getting onto your local borough. And as I say, it's a free service. They are paid by the providers. So they do everything and they are fantastic. And so it's all set up before you move in.
Again, you take away the pain and help them with all of that.
Just the whole thing is to make it, I think Nigel referred earlier to rocket science. It's just to make it a very smooth, simple transaction, because it can be terribly stressful relocating to another country, and it can just be a nightmare that it doesn't need to be, really. So,
and finally, sorry.
No, not at all. You go ahead.
Finally, I'm just conscious of time. Finally, I know that you've helped a number of our clients who just don't know where to start. They've got certain interests, whether it be the theatre.
Yes, absolutely.
Or I need to get my child into a good state school. So how would that work?
Schools for a family coming is the biggest sort of hurdle, really. And people have to decide whether or not they want to go with state education or with private education or independent. State education is where it very much is tricky, because you have to have a property before you can apply for a school. And of course, everybody wants the best school. So you don't want to commit to that property because you might not get your child into the school that's half a mile down the road. So that's a real chicken and egg situation that we work quite hard on, but it works. And we will look to the school to find out where there are places. Because if your child isn't moving at what's a national school age, which is basically 4 rising 5 or 10 rising 11 to go to secondary school, which is when the whole country starts school. So if they're moving at any other year group, they're what's called an in-year admission. And that's basically then that we would have to find places within those schools that you might, so somebody might say, yep, absolutely love the Angel area, it's been recommended to me. So we would look at state schools within that area that has places for your child. There are 2 types of schools, so I get conscious of time, but there are voluntary aided schools and community schools. Community schools will report into the local borough to say, we have this amount of places. Voluntary aided, again, are more autonomous. So we get in touch with every school that will be in that area and find out where there are places. Again, it's all quite transient. Often families give the very most a term's notice, sometimes just a couple of weeks notice. So it's a very fluid movement, and then it's trying to line up good properties that are within a walking distance, which is ideally what people want, to that school. And it becomes more challenging when you have children, three children all wanting to find schools, maybe within the same school.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Frankie and Nigel. I really
That's
appreciate
okay,
your
Karen.
time.
Thank you. Thank you for everyone's time.
And thanks to Joseph as well. I thought it was really valuable, and I hope you all did too. And before I wrap up, Lisa, do you just want to speak about the Zoom poll?
Hi, so we've got the Zoom polls just to gather some feedback on the session. I'm just going to launch it now. So you should see it on your screen. It's just a little pop-up, and there's 4 questions. How likely are you to recommend London Partners Q&A sessions with our business partners to another business? Second question, how helpful did you find the session today? And how engaging and interactive did you find the format? So over the past few weeks, we have been chopping and changing it a little bit to make it more interactive. And the last question is, what business support areas are you most interested? So it looks like continuing on that we are going to arrange more webinars in the future, but we want to make sure that they're relevant to you.
Great, thank you. So I'm just going
And
to
I'm
give
going
them a
to
bit more
end
time.
that in about 10 seconds, just get a few more in. And I'll just stop it now. 3, 2, 1.
Great.
There you go.
Great, thanks so much to all of our speakers and all of the panelists, participants even, for joining today. Our next session will be at 11 a.m. on the 5th of August with Redfern Legal, who are an immigration partner, and our legal partner, Uri Clark. And we'll have more details in our follow-up on that. Also just wanted to highlight our WhatsApp Good Newsroom. It's got a huge amount of great stories coming out of London. All you need to do is just let us know your name, and we'll send you good news stories every few days. And then here are just all of our emails. Please feel free to contact any Frankie, Nigel, or Joseph, or either myself or Lisa if you're looking to set up in London. But if you've got any questions on relocation, in contract support, and alternative banking solutions, and business development, obviously. So that's it for us today. Thank you, everyone. Look after yourselves and stay safe. Goodbye.
Thanks, Karen.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.